What's going on, guys? Billy here, and before we get into the main portion of this video, I just wanted to address the fact that I'm in a brand new shooting space, and that's important for two reasons. First of all, there's going to be some visual changes coming to the channel over the next couple of weeks, so I'll be experimenting with different lighting techniques, I'll be using some different camera angles, and this backdrop behind me, the background, is definitely going to be changed. Also, I just want to address the audio. I understand there's a little bit of an echo, I can hear it here as I talk to myself, but I am surrounded by 6 blank walls, so I'm working on soundproofing. That'll be my first order of business, but just bear with me through this transition period as I'm kind of moving all of my stuff to this new shooting space. So anyway, getting to the topic at hand, shooting Hyperlight photos with the Mavic 2 Pro. Now, I personally use the Mavic 2 Pro to shoot pretty much all of my photos, but if you've got the Mavic 2 Zoom, this video will also pertain to you because the Mavic 2 Zoom has Hyperlight. Now, for those of you who are wondering what's Hyperlight, it basically just does all the work for you when shooting at nighttime. It makes your nighttime photos look incredible. Honestly, it's very easy to do, and the reason I wanted to make this video is because I went up to New York City, I shot the skyline at nighttime on September 11th, so they had the 9/11 memorial lights shooting straight up into the sky. It was honestly gorgeous, but when I spoke to a lot of people, I said, hey, try Hyperlight, and they said, what's that? A lot of people really have no idea what this mode is, and even though I made a video about a year ago on this topic, I feel like I've got to talk about it again because it is so underrated and so underused. I think the photos you get from it look incredible. So here are some of the photos that I took when I was there in New York City. These have got to be some of my favorite and probably some of the best drone photos that I've taken to date. And let me let you guys in on a little secret here. These photos haven't been edited at all. They were taken straight off of my SD card and dropped right into this video. I didn't boost the shadows, I didn't boost the highlights, and I didn't even clean up the noise. Hyperlight does all of the work for you. It does all of the heavy lifting that goes into shooting photos at nighttime, and it makes the results just look incredible. Now, I do want to take a quick second to plug my Instagram. I did post some of my favorite edited versions of these photos over there on my page. My handle is @BillyKyle. So if you want to, go ahead, give me a follow. You can shoot me a DM and we'll chat about drones. If you want to, I'm always on Instagram, and that's the place where I post some of my best drone photos. Speaking of Instagram, when I posted those photos on all of my other social media platforms, I had a lot of people asking me which drone I used to shoot those photos, and some people even took a guess. They said, hey, did you shoot this with your Inspire 2? Or hey, did you shoot this with your Phantom 4 Pro? And I think that there wasn't a single person that guessed the Mavic 2 Pro, and it's pretty insane to think that a drone that small with a camera that small can shoot such great photos at nighttime. I mean, the low light capability when shooting in Hyperlight is insane. It does all of the heavy lifting. So what I want to do now is transition into how to use Hyperlight. Where's it at? How does it work? How do you use it? And then I want to go into my workflow on that specific shoot, like what I did to get those photos that I showed you in the beginning of this video. So first of all, where is Hyperlight and how to use it? So open up your DJI Go app when connected to your Mavic 2 Pro and jump into the camera settings. Those will be found underneath of the shutter button on the right side. The first thing that you want to do on this first page is to change your camera settings to be set automatically. So the drone and the camera itself will automatically set your shutter speed and your aperture to achieve the desired exposure value that you set. The one thing that you do not, and I repeat, do not want to be set automatically is your ISO, and you want to keep that at a range of like 100 to 400. All of those photos that I shot of the New York City skyline were shot at an ISO of 100, and they looked great. They looked so crisp. I actually had a buddy of mine shoot Hyperlight photos at an ISO of 1600, and they really just didn't look good. They looked so much better when he bumped that down to 100. So just make sure that your ISO is properly set, and it's not set to be automatic. Now, the next and the final thing that we have to do is jump into the second tab marked by the camera icon up at the top. Tap on photo and tap on Hyperlight. From here, you're good to start shooting. Just make sure that you compose your images properly. Now, after you shoot a few photos with Hyperlight, you might be wondering to yourself, how does this work? How do these photos look so good coming straight out of the camera? And I don't have a perfect answer, but what I would say is that DJI has implemented an algorithm into the DJI Go app very similar to the night sight shooting mode in Google's Pixel 3 and Pixel 3a that basically processes the image with the onboard computer. So when you shoot an image in Hyperlight, you'll notice that the camera spins around for maybe 5 or 7 seconds, and after that you get a great looking image on the other end when you look at it right there on your phone. So when you shoot the photo, the onboard computer definitely does some processing to that image, whether it reduces the noise, whether it bumps up the shadows and the highlights. I'm really not exactly sure, but whatever it does, it makes that photo look awesome. In fact, I think that Hyperlight is better than night sight on the Pixel, but that's just my opinion. Now, there are a few bad things about Hyperlight, and I know that I've been like going to war for Hyperlight. I've been speaking so highly about it, but there are a few drawbacks. There's two of them that I want to highlight. First of which, the photos come out as JPEGs. Now, that's not that big of a deal to me because you don't really need to edit these images. They come out looking incredible already. There's really no way for you to get a raw image because the image you're shooting is processed on board, so it can't give you that raw photo, that DNG file. I kind of wish that they gave you two files or the option to save the raw photo and the Hyperlight photo. That would be pretty cool, but unfortunately that's not a thing. But again, you don't really need to edit these photos all that much, and if you do, you don't need to push them around like an incredible amount. You don't need to really bump up the shadows or bump up the highlights, so you're not going to destroy these JPEGs. The other thing that kind of bums me out is that when you shoot the photos, sometimes they're either way too bright or they're way too dark. The computer or the algorithm sometimes gets things wrong. So what I would do is shoot multiple photos, and if you notice that it's consistently coming out darker, 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 we'll bump up your exposure value to plus 0.7 or plus 1 to compensate, and then the drone will shoot properly. I know that with me, when I was shooting those skyline photos, sometimes they just came out totally unusable, but again, each shot I took, each angle I went to, I probably took 10 or 15 Hyperlight photos just to make sure that the algorithm, the computer program, got it right. Alright, so that pretty much concludes all of the information that I have for you guys about how to use Hyperlight. Those are some of the things I would look out for and some of the things that I would do in order to shoot the best looking photos at nighttime. So now what I want to do is take a step back and go over my process for shooting the photos that I showed you of the New York City skyline in the beginning of this video. And you're probably sitting there wondering, how did you even fly your drone in New York? Because if you look at the Kitty Hawk app, it's nothing but red, yellow, and gray. And in some of these spots, you can't even apply for authorization to fly. But luckily, if you zoom down here towards the southern tip of Manhattan, there's a good amount of area where you're able to fly. Now, just a little bit south, there is actually an approach pattern for Newark Airport. So if you fly further down there, you're not able to go above 500 feet. But still, that's a great vantage point to shoot the city, and you don't need authorization to be flying in an approach pattern. In fact, we actually checked, and the planes were coming above us at around 3,000 feet, maybe even 4,000 feet. So anyway, I flew right here. I didn't need authorization. I didn't have the DJI Go app saying, oh, you need to put in your information to get authorization. I didn't have any sort of warnings pop up. I was able to put the drone up and fly over. No height restrictions. It was incredible. So I flew from over here in Hoboken. I flew across the city down here to the One World Trade Center. Let's see if I can get it to pop up. It's right over here, the One World Trade Center on the right side in Manhattan. I flew from Hoboken here on the left side, just where that Colgate Center is, and I got some great shots. I was able to go across the water. The one thing that you really have to look out for is other manned aircraft. And actually, the way that me and my buddy were doing it, my buddy Steve, is he would have Flight Radar 24 opened up on his phone while I was flying, and then vice versa. So while he was flying, I would be spotting for him, and I was also using Flight Radar on my phone. If you guys aren't familiar with Flight Radar, definitely check it out, definitely download it. It's a free app. You can actually track all of the planes and all of the helicopters flying in your area, and you can actually even go across the country and see the planes that are flying around there. It's pretty cool, and if you tap on them, you can see their calibrated altitude. So it really is a huge lifesaver when flying drones, especially in a very busy space. So when we were flying, we were equipped with LEDs on our drones. We were being very careful, and that's how you've got to do it when you fly in New York City, and the payoff was worth it because those photos look incredible. So that's kind of all I've got to say about the drone flying portion of it. You've definitely got to be safe and careful when you're in such a busy airspace like that, and also make sure that you're not in controlled airspace, which right here, this area, we were perfect. Now getting into these photos, right, I'll show you some of them again. I was playing with some different composition angles. I wanted to shoot the skyline straight on. I wanted to shoot it from the left side. I wanted to shoot it from the right side. I even tried to get as close as I could to the lights, but I didn't want to be flying like directly over the roads and the buildings of the city. So I went right on, I guess you could say, the coastline of New York City and shot downwards. I mean, I tried to get as many different shots as possible, and honestly, I think they came out looking great. I just quickly want to backpedal because remember, Hyperlight does a lot of the processing for you. It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, as I like to say. So it does all of that for you. Your number one concern really needs to be the composition. So I noticed that when I was flying to the left, that I was kind of combining the two lights, and I wanted to make sure I saw both lights to signify both towers. It just made the frame, made the photo look more complete. So I noticed that the right side was probably my favorite, and something that was really killer is trying to get all the way over there and out over the water was burning a ton of battery. So by the time I got out there and I was shooting, I probably had maybe 10 or maybe even 8 minutes to shoot photos before I had to bring the drone all the way back. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, did you shoot any video? I did with my Inspire 2. I really wasn't all that happy with it. The thing that I really want to do is capture these lights in photos, capture the skyline in photos. I'm actually a little bit scared to shoot nighttime video. I just don't think that these cameras are good enough to be shooting clean nighttime video. Maybe I'm just not experienced enough in that field, but I think the photos looked great. Now, I did want to touch on the editing process of everything, but there's really not all that much editing you have to do. I mean, right now you're looking at a screenshot or a screen recording of my screen from Lightroom, and this photo, which is ultimately the one that I posted online, you'll notice that my settings really weren't changed all that much. I mean, if anything, I was changing the highlights and the shadows and moving around the colors to make sure that the colors were what I wanted them to look like. I didn't want it to look too orange, but I also didn't want it to look too blue. So again, I mean, I played around with it, I moved it a little bit, but they come out of the camera looking great. Look at kind of both of these images right here, the start, the finish. Really, if I didn't make the edits, it would still look amazing. So I think that is pretty much all that I have to say about Hyperlight. Again, guys, it is an incredible shooting mode. I would recommend that anybody who has a Mavic 2 go out and try it, even tonight. Go out and try it if you live near a city, if you live near an area that has a lot of light, because if you live in a small town, it might be hard to really take advantage of Hyperlight because then the shutter needs to drag out for longer. Maybe you need to bump up that ISO, but in a scenario where you're shooting a bright city like New York or Philadelphia or Los Angeles, or maybe even if you're overseas like Tokyo, I couldn't even imagine the shots you could get with Hyperlight. So again, Hyperlight is amazing. I sort of planned to shoot this video as a vlog, like going out and shooting, but it was dark. I was a little bit stressed out flying in New York City. It's always a whole different animal when you're flying in an area with so much air traffic. So there's a lot of things going on in my mind, and shooting a video is the last thing that I needed to worry about. So I figured I'd sit down, collect my thoughts, and ultimately I just wanted to share with you guys more of those photos because I loved how they turned out. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think of Hyperlight down in the comment section below. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.